Welcome to Secure It with Dr. KJ. Today I am joined by a cybersecurity executive, leadership advisor, and decorated public servant whose career spans the United States Marine Corps, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the highest levels of enterprise technology. He served as head of the cybersecurity branch at the FBI's San Francisco field office, bringing more than 2 decades of public service before transitioning to the private sector. He went on to serve as vice president and field chief security officer at Palo Alto Networks and served in Google Cloud's office of the chief information security officer, helping organizations strengthen their security posture through digital transformation. He is currently board director and managing partner at Apogee Global RMS, where he advises organizations on cybersecurity strategy, risk management, and resilience. He is also president and board member at Cyversity, a nonprofit dedicated to increasing diversity in the cybersecurity profession, and he holds a Bachelor of Science from the United States Naval Academy, an MBA from Pepperdine University, and carries the CISSP and CISM certifications. MK, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
Yes, been looking forward to this. So let's jump right into question 1. So with autonomous AI systems capable of breaching systems faster than any human threat actor, how do organizations need to rethink their risk framework to account for threats that operate at machine speed? And where does that human judgment still matter the most?
Fantastic question. We probably should be talking a little bit more about the Mythos report that recently came out from Anthropic. We always knew when this war started, the war in terms of the progression and development of artificial intelligence, that we would get to the point where artificial intelligence would be maximized against organizations on behalf of adversaries. I would proffer this in retort to that, though. I've always thought that, yes, the adversaries are now equipped with a much more enhanced capability. The degree to which they will likely win against folks that are not doing the basics and not doing what they're supposed to be doing will likely increase. But there's also a benefit to the side of the defender or protectors, if you will. And that benefit is the leveraging of this technology to now do the things at scale that they have had a challenge doing over the course of the entirety of the cybersecurity life cycle. We should be able to do the fundamentals better, along with the use of AI, which means that the basics in any environment should be covered. We should be able to, at machine speed, respond to threats to the enterprise. And so if you are using technology that will allow you to respond, segregate, and identify threats that are likely to impact your organization, you should be able to respond to them in kind. What that means is that in this world of AI, I believe there's finally a parity, actually, between the adversary and the defender. And that parity means that the winner is then left to the individual who is exercising, in all likelihood, the best possible practices, frameworks, methodologies, and analysis in order to be able to win in this particular ongoing scenario. And I do believe that for the practitioner, in using frameworks that will allow you to build a governance program that properly implements artificial intelligence in the environment will give you not necessarily a winning edge, but it will give you the ability to combat adversarial behavior at speed and likely in a way that you have not been able to historically. Now, that requires a bunch of things to happen. And you can't naturally assume that every enterprise is going to do all of the things that they need to do in order to ensure that their AI is as capable and secure as it needs to be in order to combat adversarial behavior. But I do believe the pieces are there. It requires organizations to use an immense amount of diligence in terms of the implementation of these tools, and then applying a risk framework that will allow them to understand for their environment what represents the highest probability of potential attack and begin to reduce the risk of that that series, whatever those top tier things are, by implementing controls and taking steps to make sure that they're in a position to first identify those threats when they're happening, and then to be able to counteract them in a resilient fashion. So a lot's got to take place. Yes, the adversaries they're able to do things probably that historically, certainly at the speed and velocity that they didn't have available to them. The landscape's changing, and defenders need to change in concert or along with that change.
Yeah, I think you kind of mentioned it a little bit. So how do organizations really measure and quantify the risk when that attack surface really evolves autonomously?
Yeah, I think that organizations, part of the reason I established my business at Apogee Global was because I think organizations are not really taking the time to identify and register, if you will, the risk to their organization. There's a lot of activity happening. And I think, unfortunately, certainly in the information security realm, that activity is around tool adoption. Let me identify a tool to counter a particular issue that we've identified in our environment. And that tool adoption, as you well know from your career, oftentimes ends up with tool spread throughout the enterprise. Visibility, in all likelihood, has gotten to be more complex and difficult over time because you've added so many tools to the environment. And what happens is that there's no strategic planning in place. My concern has always been for CISOs and folks in the security apparatus that they spend an inordinate amount of time answering tactical issues and not enough time doing strategic planning and strategic oversight. My recommendation to CISOs is that you almost need to commit to building a separate strategic committee that will help to drive strategic objectives while you have your day-to-day teams with their eyes focused on day-to-day operations and what needs to happen. Because without that strategic insight, I think you're building for adversarial activity of the past when you should be thinking about adversarial activity of the present and future.
1,000%. I couldn't have said it better myself. And so I want to throw you a great a change of pace.
Yeah.
AI, right? So where do you see organizations getting the balance wrong between adversarial AI threats and AI-powered defenses? And what does mature AI security strategy actually look like?
Yeah. So to the last part of your question, I'm not sure we can answer that yet. Mature AI strategy, if folks are not taking the time in a diligent fashion to even build the governance committees necessary, evaluate the tools as they bring them into the environment, give thumbs up or thumbs down to any one particular tool based on, one, the business case for the tool, and then whether or not, the security folks give you a thumbs up that they can implement it securely. Like, that process needs to take place. I think there's been a little bit of a rush to implementation. And so I think what you'll find is organizations scattered everywhere from, hey, we're just bringing these tools in, to we're on complete lockdown and we don't want any of these tools in our environment because we just don't know how to do it safely. And then all things in between. And I think until organizations take those diligent steps, using risk advisors and others to help them understand how to take steps through that implementation process, I think we're going to experience challenges in that regard. The frequency with which you see now vendors applying the AI label to their tool sets should give everyone pause. There should be a lot more time spent putting the vendors on their back heels, making sure that you understand the technical capabilities of these tools, not listening to just promises about what's on the roadmap, but what can they actually do right now. And by implementing these tools, what are you opening yourself up to in the way of potential challenges as these vendors continue to perfect the security aspects of the tools? Because they haven't thought of everything. That's impossible. But my fear is that, and I've been in the enterprise environment on the end with sales teams, everybody likes to get out over their skis talking about what it is that they're capable of doing without actually giving the real roadmap or the tried and true capabilities to the potential customer, because you want to get them locked in on that sale. I think it's incumbent upon everybody to go maybe a half pace slower, ask more questions, ask to see things in diligence, get those security engineers on the calls, have conversations with them about capabilities, because they'll tell you that they're actually security engineers or the developers are actually incapable of lying to you. If you ask them the right questions, they will tell you exactly where they are in terms of the development, or you can extract from their answers whether or not the capabilities are as far along as maybe the sales team has indicated that they are to you. And those are the conversations that need to happen. It's not a matter of trying to hide anything from anyone. It's just, hey, let's be straight on full capability set. What should we expect now? What complementing or compensating controls do we need to put into place while you get this product back to, up to the next 2 or 3 iterations where you're going to start locking things down? And what tools are out there that I can identify that can help me along in this process to make sure I'm doing all the things that I need to do, locking down certain aspects of the environment and taking into account the things I need to take into account. There's a lot of conversations that should be happening, and I'm not so sure all of those conversations are happening in the detail that they should be.
Well, I mean, no, they're not. They're not for sure. But I think that's something that's just going to have to come with time, right? I think there's going to be an event. There's going to be something,
multiple ones probably. Yeah.
Right. And that's the unfortunate piece of this. So when we think about some of the most common mistakes you see these organizations make when deploying AI as a defense tool, what are you seeing in the enterprise?
What I'm seeing in the enterprise is a jockeying by vendors to ensure that their tools get adopted prior to other tools being implemented. And here's the danger in what I'm seeing. Again, I made the statement earlier that most vendors are applying the AI label to their tools right now without actually explaining or telling you exactly what it is that they mean by AI SOAR or AI SIM products or everything under the sun. And so again, those conversations need to be happening in a much more deep fashion. I think the vendors may be getting a little bit ahead of themselves, claiming that the tools do things that they don't quite do just yet. But I mean, with that said, I'm one of the folks who ultimately is completely bullish on the idea that potentially AI can be a first line of defense from a cybersecurity standpoint, and enact defenses in a way that is substantially better than what we might consider to be just the direct human interaction that we've been used to over the past couple of decades. I do believe that the technology is capable of getting to a point where automations will largely handle that first tier of identification and response to particular alerts in the environment. And I think, we're quite a ways down the road on that. And I do believe that we're going to get to a point where, by the time a human sees it, it will have gone through a lot of iterations. A lot of information will be caked into a case that a human may have to evaluate and make a decision point. And I think the AI can actually even be helpful in creating the options as to what those decision points should be. And I think that from that standpoint, we should expect to see responses to alerts and incidents happen in a much quicker fashion. But we're not quite there yet. But I do believe we're headed in that direction.
I agree. I think there are many labels that are put out there. I do think it's better to have something than nothing. But
Agreed.
You have to do it the right way, right? You have to look at your business processes. I think a lot of things are coming down to data and identity. That's kind of where I'm seeing the market move. And I'm pretty sure you might be seeing it go that same way and maybe a little bit differently. But I think those are some of the things that we can kind of look and kind of harness on, because identity is king, right? Data is king. And so if people are already taking the data and they're also taking the identity, I also look at the future of where does that leave quantum, right? When quantum computing comes into play and and it takes a hold and deciphers those encryption keys. It's probably already happening. I shouldn't say probably, it is already happening, but we need to focus and figure out how do we safeguard that even more so.
KJ, you know what I mean? As you say that out loud, I begin to think about the history of our industry. And one of the things that we've shown ourselves to be is not quite adherent to these moments that we've experienced. So there are time or phases that come along in the cybersecurity industry where there's a refocus on something that could be really good for us, And then before you know it, before we even get done being excellent at that thing, zero trust, I think, is a great example of that. Before we even get done being excellent at that, a new thing, because innovation moves so fast, hits the scene, and we're already on to the next major pivot within the industry. I think zero trust was the phase that we were experiencing before the AI boom. And I can tell you for a fact that most organizations still haven't gotten the zero trust thing right. And now we're already on to the next pivot, which is AI adoption, AI tooling, AI identity, agents. And these issues compound, creating these super, super complex environments, which takes us, I think, back to the beginning topic around sort of automated identification of vulnerabilities and things like that. I'm really interested to see where this goes. And I know that unfortunately, I really believe that organizations are largely unprepared for what we're about to encounter.
I agree. And Mythos is about to be right at the top of the list of that.
Yep.
So you're a great leader. So when I think about security leaders trying to really close the gap between intent and execution, what is the most important mindset shift needed to move from technical expert to true organizational leader in these times?
Yeah, organizational resilience comes to mind. I actually prefaced this answer a couple of topics ago, but I think that separating strategic thinking from tactical thinking is the paramount thing that every leader needs to be doing right now. If I were a sitting CISO in a large-scale organization at this moment, I would be thinking, I would be asking myself, am I doing enough strategic planning to make sure that we are ready for tomorrow and the future? Or am I heavily concentrated on what's happening today and maybe what happened in the past with tool adoption, tool identification? And if your answer to that is, wow, we've spent an inordinate amount of time reviewing and talking about tools, and I haven't spent any time thinking about the roadmap and strategy. In other words, envisioning what kind of security apparatus I'm actually building, that's cause for concern. You probably should bring in some help you get your hands wrapped around what that strategy might look like. And then after the strategy is given to you, in partnership with the organizations that you're working with, figure out how to implement that strategy. And again, that may mean you need to segregate teams or build out some kind of team that's looking forward and helping you to implement that thing. Don't carry the entire thing yourself as the CISO. You can't be, answering questions on the thousands of alerts that the SOC team is seeing, and then at the same time thinking about how you build for the future all in one day. You pivot back and forth between those things. It makes it really difficult. Start building committees, start building teams that can help you execute longer term. And that would be my advice to folks for sure.
No, I love that. And so last piece of advice is for those folks in the mid-career, journey that they are on. What are some of the things that you would tell them that they need to be on the lookout for to grow their career within cybersecurity, risk, and so forth?
I have a mantra. It's about making yourself indispensable. I think in any organization that you go into, you need to make yourself indispensable. And the way that you do that is you stay ahead of the curve. Always be engaged in projects that are impactful. Always be engaged in learning on your own behalf that make sure that you're ready for all of the pivots and changes that are happening. That requires you to spend probably a little bit of extra time outside of the work hours to learn what's happening in the industry. Right. Become opinionated. Your opinions matter, and make sure that you can substantiate those opinions, but become a thought leader in the areas for which you have developed experience and expertise. And then conveying that thought leadership, make sure you back it up with substantial facts and data to back up your positions. But trust in that. And when you have shown yourself to be someone who can be relied upon, someone who is impactful and important to team efforts and team outcomes, you will be retained and folks will always rely on you. If the boss can't identify something impactful that you've done in the past 12 months, then you're in danger. And we've all seen the landscape changing over the past, 2.5 years in organizations. As you all know, you don't want to wake up and get that email from the CEO saying, thanks for your efforts, but we're going to move on. here, HR is going to be contacting you about your separation package. That's not the position that you want to be in. So continue to make sure that you're being impactful. Ask to be invited into those rooms where you can play a substantive role in the important projects that are happening within these companies. And then when you are given the opportunity, make sure you knock it out of the park.
Wow. Love that. Love that advice. MK, this has been amazing. I really appreciate you jumping on and having this conversation with me. I look forward to having you again down in the future, and look forward to it, my friend.
Appreciate it, KJ. Thanks for having me on.
That was MK Palmore, Board Director and Managing Partner at Apogee Global RMS, bringing serious depth to the conversation around AI-driven threats, organizational resilience, and what it truly means to lead in this environment. A few things stood out from today's conversation. First, the idea that AI has created a genuine parity between adversaries and defenders, and that the winner will be determined by who executes the fundamentals best. Second, the critical distinction between tactical thinking and strategic planning, and why CISOs must build separate teams to manage both. And finally, MK's challenge to mid-career professionals. Make yourself indispensable, become opinionated, and show up in the rooms where it matters. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow, like, and subscribe to Secured with Dr. KJ on your favorite platform. Securing tomorrow, one episode at a time.